Good evening, everyone. It's super exciting to all get together tonight and talk about a parent's guide to supplement for active kids and teens. I am your guest speaker for this evening. My name is Allison Tanis, and I'm super excited to be here tonight. I'm a nutritional scientist, a registered holistic nutritionist, and a US and Canadian national champion. So I know all about being an athlete. I'm also an author of 5 nutrition books and a mom of athletes, which is probably the most important. So if you are also chasing around with a bunch of little ones, trying to get from sport to sport and thinking, how can I give them a nutritional edge? Hopefully, this seminar is going to help you out. Yes, my name is Allison Tanis. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining me all in your busy schedules. I am a paid medical advisor to Nestle Health Sciences, and I have no other conflicts or interest to disclose. So, tonight we're going to talk all about how to give your child a nutritional edge. We're going to talk about the fuel for energy that we're going to need. How do we help our kids fuel for that endurance? And, of course, how do we fuel for recovery? We're going to help figure out ways to support the immune system, key for our little ones, not only for day to day stuff, but also as athletes. Also, are there things that we can be doing to be building stronger bones and teeth? And lastly, we're going to have a few tips to help improve cognitive health and well being. There are so many benefits of being active for kids and teens. I'm sure you already see this with your own child or teen at home. Simple things you're aware of, like their muscle fitness is there from all of that pushing and jumping and spinning they're doing. And while they're doing that, they're actually increasing their bone strength. Heart health is improving as that heart muscle has to pump all of the blood around to let them do their favorite sport or activity. But what's also interesting is there are additional benefits to being active. Little kids that are active have the benefit of a cardiometabolic health benefit. What is that? Well, that means that it helps them maintain healthy blood sugar levels. And there's additional ones as well. When you look at children who do sports or are active, they actually have better attention and memory. So we start to see academic performance improvements. And my favorite, of course, is the mental wellness. We see a lower risk of depression and a lot happier kids when they're out being active. So enjoy the knowing that your child is being active, hopefully getting a lot of joy out of the activity they're doing, but they're also getting a gamut of health benefits as well. We're going to talk about some of the best fuels for active kids and teens. And there's sort of 3 different categories we need to consider. First of all, what do they need as a fuel source to have enough energy to get through their sport? Second of all, how do we help them get to that endurance stage? Some sports require their kid to keep going for a long time. So we're going to help them find the fuel that'll help them get there. And then most importantly, what can they fuel their body with as a recovery to help them be better and more prepared to do their sport again next time? The body uses in physical activity a wide variety of energy sources. There's actually 3. So there's carbohydrates, fats, and protein. You probably remember these as being your 3 macronutrients. You might have talked about that in nutrition class before. In the chart here, you're going to see sort of 3 different intensities of activity. The first one, it's kind of a small box. This might be your child out playing soccer at recess. They're going to need some energy to be able to kick the ball around and giggle with their friends and probably dive and make their pants all grass stained and muddy. And if you have a boy at home like I do, you go through a lot of pants, there's a lot of holes in them. But as they're doing this activity, they're going to be burning through some of the available sugars or blood glucose, as well as some of those free fatty acids that are floating around in their bloodstream. These might even be things that they have in their bloodstream because perhaps they had snack before recess. But as your child gets to be into a more intense physical activity, something with a moderate intensity, this could be a practice, for example, then we're going to start to see that their body needs more types of energy. They're going to start to need more of those blood sugars, more of the blood fatty acids, and they're also going to need to have a backup source. There's only so much sugar floating around in their bloodstream after a small snack. So they're going to need to use a stored source. And that's where muscle glycogen comes in. Muscle glycogen is really neat. Your body, it's so smart. When you ask your body to do something active, maybe your kid plays basketball. First couple of practices, right? they're out of breath, maybe their arms can't throw the ball as well, maybe they can't quite jump as high. That's okay because as they're stressing out their body in that practice, they're asking their body to adapt, and your body will. It will get stronger, and it also starts to build more of these muscle glycogen cells. What is this? It's kind of like a gas tank. When you've got these little gas tanks in your muscles, they can fill back up with carbohydrates or glucose. And that's what we want to see because when you go to these even higher intensity sports, we really rely heavily on those little gas tanks in our muscle cells called glycogen cells. And we need those to be filled up with carbohydrates. So you're going to guess, and we're going to talk a lot about carbohydrates tonight. We'll talk a little bit about fats and proteins and how these fuels can help our kids get the energy, the endurance, and the recovery they need to be at their best in sport and activity. So let's start with fuel for energy. I am a huge fan of whole foods. There are massive advantages to using whole foods in your kids' daily life. There's healthy fats in your whole foods, things like avocados and nuts and seeds. These are great fatty acids, super helpful for your kid's body and also a potential energy source. Carbohydrates are also found in whole foods, and we need these important carbohydrates, these important energy sources for our muscles and our brains. Interestingly enough, research shows that active kids benefit from a diet that's high or rich in these kind of carbohydrates, these kind of whole food carbohydrates. It's really helpful for kids doing like a basketball or gymnastics. We would call that an intermittent high intensity sport. Maybe even hockey would be an example where you're going, there might be a break, and then you got to go again. We're also seeing a huge focus on carbohydrates in kids and teens when they're doing training and competition because we want them to be able to refill those glycogen cells in the muscles to be able to ensure that they're fueled up, all those gas tanks are ready to go for their next time that they're doing their sport. Oh, and don't forget about protein. Your body needs protein to build those strong muscles so that they can do the active thing, but protein also can be an energy source. Let's say you've got a cross country runner at home and your little one is out there doing that long distance run. Eventually, you kind of run low on the sugars and the fats available, so you start to break down protein or muscles and use those to make energy. So we also need to reconsider protein when we're looking for a fuel source. And those are all available in whole foods. But there's more. There's more in whole foods. There's B vitamins in whole foods. And if you remember from chemistry class, you actually need 4 B vitamins to be able to make energy in your cells. Whole grain bread, good source of B vitamins. Great way to have a sandwich maybe on the way to practice. A banana, the ultimate portable fruit snack to go. I love a banana, also a source of B vitamins. Now, I know I have mushrooms on here. I can't actually imagine your kid eating a container of vegetables that includes mushrooms on the way to practice, but I just wanted you to know that that's another whole food that contains B vitamins. So maybe you can put them in to another meal. But most importantly, I wanted to mention fiber. I know we always think about fiber as helping with constipation, and it can. And some athletes, particularly kid athletes, can struggle with constipation. There's also another problem with constipation. If there's a lot of sort of waste sitting around in their digestive system, then toxins can start to build up. And when toxins build up, that means your body's going to have a hard time. And we want our body not to have a hard time. When we're an active body, we want it being at its prime. And fiber is really helpful about making sure that constipation doesn't become an issue. It also can help with this toxin buildup. But get this. Fiber is also a great way to increase your energy levels. And that's a really fascinating fact. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. But I also wanted to mention to you that fiber can also help you with the absorption of some of these great nutrients like the B vitamins we mentioned. So we'll think a lot about fiber as one of these great advantages of whole foods. So include whole foods as a good fuel source for energy for active kids and teens. We can have healthy fats in there, carbohydrates and protein. We've got these B vitamins and fiber. So lots of great advantages to whole foods. Let's be honest. Sometimes getting whole foods into our kids is a little bit of a challenge. It might just be that your schedule's really busy. I get that. We're running all over the house tonight as well, trying to get everyone to all their sports. But there's also the picky eaters. I have one in the house, and I know sometimes it's really, let's be honest, it's really hard to get him to eat greens. That's just the way it is. Salad is not his thing. We've come up with some options. And what I really enjoy having is something like this on hand for those times that I'm thinking, My kid needs some more good quality, nutrient dense ingredients. Where can I get that? This is Raw Organic Perfect Food. It's a green superfood. It's actually juiced greens powder. So it's just greens and sprouts and fruits and veggies dried in this nice little convenient package that can sit on your shelf. So you can hide this in smoothies, for example, and it's a great way to get in some more whole foods to your kids, particularly green ones, if you're struggling with that in your schedule or with your picky eater. Now, what about the sport or athlete that has to do some endurance? It can be hard to keep going as a kid for a while. And we can really understand that as the parents too, right? Sometimes we've done a sport and we think, wow, this is a lot. Apologize, I'm having a technical issue here on the back side. Tuned, regular programming returning. Okay, good. Made it switch. Okay. Fuel for endurance. Fuel for endurance. There are huge advantages to having carbohydrates in your daily routine when you're an athlete, particularly as a kid or a teen. These are great energy sources for both your brain and your muscles. If you don't have enough carbohydrates, I know everyone got into sort of like this anti-carb mode there for a while, but that's not helpful for kids or teens, particularly when they're active. If there isn't enough carbohydrates in a child's diet that's active, they start to have fatigue, and we call that premature fatigue. So they get tired before they really should be in terms of their sport. And then your body actually, the body actually then has to find energy somewhere. So it starts to break down muscle tissue. And we don't really want it to be doing that because we want those muscles to be functioning at their best when we're being active. Another interesting fact is that kids actually don't tend to store as much glycogen, those little gas tanks in our muscle cells, as adults do. So that sometimes can mean that kids will have an earlier onset of fatigue during exercise than maybe an adult would. So having enough carbohydrate during training periods, particularly like competitions like those tournaments where it's game after game after game, this is really important. And it's also really important to remember that we don't just find carbohydrates in grains, we can also find them in other amazing whole foods like fruits and vegetables. Beans and legumes are also a good source of carbohydrates. And one of my latest favorites, particularly because it's fall, are these starchy vegetables. So, like squashes and sweet potatoes are also awesome sources of carbohydrates for an active kid and teen. So, when we're looking at recovery, let's think about what is happening in the body. Well, we need to refuel or rehydrate, sorry, because we just lost a lot of water, right? We've been sweating, we've been breathing, and studies show that kids, athletes in particular, only will drink about a third of the liquid during the sport or activity that they've lost. So let's say your child does a soccer game for an hour and they drink a third of their water bottle. What they've lost, though, probably in water content, is the whole water bottle. So encourage them to continue to drink after the sport and rehydrate their body. That's really helpful for recovery. We also need to refuel. Remember all those little gas tanks, those glycogen cells in the muscles? Well, they've run out of fuel. So we want to make sure that we fill up the gas tank so that the next time the active kid or teen heads on out, they've got lots of gas or energy ready to keep them going. And last but not least is to rebuild. And rebuilding is hugely important when we talk about kids and active kids and teens, because as an athlete, you're pushing your body. You're jumping, you're spinning, you're flipping, you're skating, whatever you're doing. And those muscles are working hard to do that. And as they do that, they can get a little bit damaged. They can get sort of broken up and they need to rebuild. They need to adapt. That's the whole point of training, is to get your muscles to work hard so that they'll change to get bigger, stronger, faster. So post exercise for recovery, there's a huge advantage to using protein. Now, despite popular diets and trends in adult exercise nutrition, using a really high amount of protein is actually not super beneficial for teens. What we do see in the literature, though, is that if we include protein at breakfast and use small amounts of protein, maybe every 3 to 4 hours, that's hugely beneficial for kids. Now, if you're looking for a way to get protein in your kid, and maybe eating a whole food meal is not an option in your day, or maybe at certain parts of your day. Sometimes it's nice to know that there's an easy alternative. This is organic plant-based protein from Garden of Life, and it does help reduce recovery time and promotes muscle repair and rebuilding. So in here, there's 30 grams of organic plant-based protein, which does include 5 grams. That's like that perfect amount in the science that we want to see of these branched chain amino acids called BCAAs. Why are branched chain amino acids so important? Well, they can go into the muscles very easily. They don't take a lot of extra digestion and work around like some of the other amino acids do. These branched chain amino acids are really easy for muscles to suck up and use, which is what you want. You want to help them rebuild. You'll also find inside of this product a high antioxidant blend filled with polyphenols, and that's really helpful in supporting post-workout soreness, right? How many times has a kid come home and said, "Oh, my muscles are really sore?" And then we can start thinking about, well, what can we use as nutrients to help us with that recovery? Interestingly enough, there's also 2 billion CFUs of a particular probiotic, and it's called Bifidobacterium lactis BIO4. I'm just going to say BIO4 for now because you don't need a Latin lesson in probiotics, but keep your memory on that particular strain. We're going to talk about some of its unique benefits in athletes a little later on tonight. Now, I did mention plant-based proteins. I know a lot of people have talked about other forms of protein are there, and the question I'm always getting is plant-based proteins a good idea for athletes? So I pulled out a study for you because that's what I do. I'm a science geek. There was 31 randomized controlled studies that were reviewed, and they looked at plant-based proteins as supplements, just like the one we saw, and they said, yeah, they do provide a greater benefit in athletic performance in healthy individuals compared to those that are adding a no or low protein ingestion. So think about adding protein in as part of the recovery for improved restoring of muscle and performance. That was a lot. So let's do a quick little summary and make sure you're feeling really well equipped to give your child a nutritional edge in terms of their fuel. So when we're thinking about fuel for energy before the sporting event, 3, 4, 2, depending on your kid or your life, because we know life doesn't work around sports all the time. You want to make sure the child has a nice balanced meal. That would be delicious for them to enjoy some foods that they enjoy and hopefully including something maybe that isn't overly heavy. We don't want something heavy in fats or animal meats too early, before a game, because that's going to be heavy sitting in the digestive system. But a nice, good balanced meal will be great 2 to 4 hours before sport. Half an hour pre-sport, might be an hour depending on if you have a hockey player, sometimes they're in a change room, it's not an option, but pre-sport, half an hour-ish, an hour before, a whole food carbohydrate would be great. I know a lot of friends like that trusty banana. A couple of soccer friends like to elastic band applesauces to their water bottles because they'll remember to use that. So there's lots of different whole foods we can use for carbohydrates just before, making sure that our body has lots of available carbohydrates to help us with that energy when we play the sport. Now, quick note during the sport, if the sport is long, like it lasts more than an hour, maybe you've got a 90-minute game or you've got a long cross-country run, maybe you've got a really endurance sort of runner at home, then think about consuming some carbohydrates during that sport. I know this is when people tend to think about things like sport drinks. Be careful with some of the sport drinks. You want to make sure you read those ingredients very carefully, make sure that what's in there is what you want to be in there. That we do see in science, though, that having some carbohydrates during those long, more than post 1 hour sports is pretty helpful for kids. I think that's where the applesauce pack is coming in handy with my friend's soccer kid. Post sport, half an hour post sport. If your kid hasn't already left the change room or the field or the gym where they're in and said, "I'm so hungry," then you probably want to encourage them to eat. We do want to make sure the body has that chance to refuel after sport, and carbohydrates are a really great thing to think about right after sport. It's especially important for kids and teens that are active to replenish those carbohydrates during periods of intense training and competition, like a tournament. Now, an hour after, if you haven't already gotten it in, make sure you're reaching for that protein to help you with that optimal recovery and get those muscles back to where they want to be. Sometimes finding a whole meal can be challenging after or before sports. So here's a great option if you're looking for one. There's a raw organic all-in-one shake, and it's got all in one, just what you're thinking. It's got the protein, the superfoods, the fiber, and about 21 different whole food vitamins and minerals. So this is a nice sort of All-in-one idea. It's a shake. It helps build lean muscle when combined with regular training and a healthy, balanced diet, helps maintain immune function, and helps with healthy bones, hair, nail, and skin. This particular product is gluten-free, certified vegan. It doesn't have soy or dairy in it, or fillers, artificial colors, sweeteners, flavors, or preservatives. So it's really lovely. This is one of my favorite things about Garden of Life is it's not just that they put in really good quality ingredients, they make sure they have things like it's certified USDA organic, it's non-GMO, all these sort of wonderful clean ingredients, and then they don't add in other things. So that's sort of great to know as well if you're looking for an option. So we fueled our kid. Hopefully, they're doing a great job. They're having fun in their activity. This is when sometimes people want to ask, okay, how much training is too much training? Do I know if my kid is getting enough? I'm trying to make sure they get enough of these good whole food fuels and they're doing well. You're going to know if there is not enough recovery time because your kid starts to get an overuse injury, or they might start to show symptoms of overtraining syndrome. And those can be things like a lack of energy, muscle soreness, sleep disturbances, and the very bottom of the list there, this is the one that I always notice, a frequent upper respiratory tract infection. Upper respiratory tract infections are like colds and flus, those sort of like phlegmy things that I feel like are in my house every week. And it's because it's really common to get colds as kids. They say that in the science, they estimate there's 7 to 10 colds per year in a kid. That can last anywhere from 2 to 14 days. So that means your kid could be sick 25% of the time. That's a lot of time, particularly if you've got an athlete at home and they're trying to get in the training. They don't want to be sick. So, is there anything we can do to sort of help kids not get sick so often? And if you've got an elite kid, we see more often that as we increase the intensity and frequency of exercise, how often they get sick goes up. There's that sweet spot in the middle where if a kid's got a little bit of activity, they seem to have better health, but if they have too much activity, they seem to get sick more often. And we also see this in Olympic or elite athletes. When you have an intense period of training or competition, you tend to see this higher risk of illness, particularly these upper respiratory tract issues. Luckily, there's been lots of science on activities and how it is that we can help athletes stay healthy. And an effective strategy for immune support in athletes is to increase the intake of carbohydrates with fiber and polyphenols, says science. Well, that's great because we just talked all about the benefits of whole foods and polyphenols and fibers that are found in whole foods. And we can see that they can also help our kids' immune systems, particularly because they have to work so hard when they are being active. Their bodies are stressed. They're more likely to come down with these types of infections. So I mentioned whole foods are super beneficial for your body in many ways in energy and endurance, but they're also really helpful for immune support. Things like vitamin C. People are pretty familiar with the importance of vitamin C and helping white blood cells do their job. Bioflavonoids are also present in whole foods. That's what's so beautiful about a whole food. It doesn't just give you the nutrient that you need, it tends to give you those little cofactors, the friends that the nutrient needs to be able to get into the body and do a really good job. And of course, fiber is present. If you're looking for some options for vitamin C, Garden of Life has a vitamin C organic spray. This is pretty fun because no pills for your kids, just a quick spray. It tastes great. It's a cherry tangerine flavor. There's no added sugars to it. It does support the immune system and promotes skin and tissue health. And it has, of course, all the great standards you would want to expect from Garden of Life. It's certified organic, it's non-GMO verified. This is actually made with an organic alma berry with bioflavonoids in it, which is the co-nutrient that vitamin C needs for absorption. Another nutrient that's really helpful for immune support, particularly in kids, and I think we're starting to learn as a society a lot more about the importance of vitamin D. And as it gets darker and we move into fall and winter, we definitely need to think more about vitamin D than we may have in the summer. So if you're looking for a good option, this is a vegan D3 organic spray. It's very easy to use. It's got a vanilla flavor, and there's 1,000 milligrams of 1,000 IUs of vitamin D in the spray, which is really helpful. Now, if you're wondering about dosages in kids in terms of vitamin D, I'll just bring up this quick review. They looked at 7 different randomized controlled trials. So that's close to 6,000 children, which is a great big group of kids. And they said, hey, if we give them the sort of standard 400 IUs, are we going to see a health benefit? Do we start to see a lower risk of these infections? They didn't. But what was really interesting is at 1,000 IUs, they did. And so that's why I think it's so great to have that spray available at that dosage. And what were they seeing? Well, they saw 56% fewer coughs, 57% fewer colds, and 59% fewer fevers. So it is a great option when you're looking for supplements that might help support a kid's immune system. Speaking of our immune system, here's a fun fact. You can pull this out on a Friday night if you like. 70% of your immune system is actually located in your gut. So let's take a look at what's happening in our gut and inside the gut of an active kid and teen. When you're eating those fibers I mentioned that are present in whole foods, you get a triple whammy effect of health benefits. I really get excited about the benefits of fibers in the gut because it's extensive. It's kind of three-parted. So, first of all, fibers are going to increase the diversity of the microbiome. So, you can think of it as being like a garden. And suddenly you've got lots of different colors of plants happening. That's what we want, right? A nice, vibrant array of colors happening. Why do you want that? Because the microbes that live in your gut, they actually produce metabolites. That's kind of a science geeky word, but they produce things that your body can use as energy. And I think that's really fascinating. And these can also help our body utilize energy, particularly our muscles. So acetate, propionate, and butyrate are all things that our muscles are going to use that are going to help our body do a better job of using that energy, which is really, really awesome. More importantly, though, we're not just improving the diversity in that garden or the microbiome. When we include fibers from whole foods, we're also increasing the number of the good microbes that are there. So not only are we increasing the types of plants in the garden, we're increasing the types of plants that we really want to be in the garden. And this is really helpful because when that garden and when your microbiome is richly diverse, it's got lots of these good probiotics in it, then suddenly you've got a healthy lining of the digestive system, which means that it's a good barrier between the food from the outside world to your inside world. Those communications that are happening back and forth become more beneficial, and we actually see an improvement in immune health, which is really exciting. There's kind of a cool interaction happening there between our microbiome and our immune system that sits there in our intestinal tract. Last but not least, I really wanted to encourage you to learn about this fun fact. When we have more fiber in our diet, it actually encourages the growth of certain types of probiotics, these helpful microbes. And one particular type of probiotic actually can take the lactate that builds up in your muscles. You know, like marathon runners, you've ever watched a marathon runner and thought, how do they run so far, so long, and their legs don't burn? It's because overtraining and over time, they've started to produce that lactate. And that lactate goes into the digestive system, and there are microbes in your digestive system that break down that lactate. They actually turn it into a type of energy your muscles can use. Super cool. So, what we want to do is we want to encourage those types of probiotics as well to be present in your digestive system and help your young athlete work with that lactate and break it down to be beneficial. And to do that, to feed this microbiome, we need to feed it fibers. So, whole foods for fibers, super great for your digestive system, helps you have more of these metabolites that help you use the energy better, helps you have more of these probiotics that keep your gut healthy, and are also going to help you break down lactate better. So, lots of cool reasons in science to eat more fiber for your gut. And more importantly, 10% of your daily energy needs actually are made by those probiotics. So, feed them some fibers, and I think you're going to appreciate it. This looks a little complicated. Please don't feel overwhelmed. I just wanted to show you the diverse ways that your microbiome, your gut microbiome, is actually benefiting your active kid and teen and yourself if you're active as well. So, when we have a digestive system that has been fed perhaps lots of whole foods, it's got lots of fibers, then it's got this diversity of microbiome going on, and it's doing lots of good things along our gut lining, which is then sending messages into our body that's slowing down the inflammation and discouraging inflammation from happening. That's great. because then we're going to see other things happening. When we've got a healthy, happy body, we've got more energy being produced, we've got more glycogen happening in those cells, those gas tanks, and we have more protein being built. So now we've got stronger muscles with more energy to do what they want. That's amazing. We've got strength then, we've got some better adaptations to the training we're doing, and we have improved athletic endurance. So there's lots of great reasons to start to feed your gut lots of these good fibers and whole foods to make sure that they're doing well. Now, before we leave the gut, we need to talk about at least one probiotic species because probiotics are really cool. And this one in particular was that BIO4. You might have mentioned that it came up. Do you remember it came up with the protein? Right. The reason that is included in that product is because Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis BIO4, which I said we'll just call BIO4 for now, is really helpful for immune support. They did a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial. So like a gold standard trial, this is what we want. And they used over 400 active adults and they used both males and females. And they found that 2 billion CFUs, same dose we saw earlier, is actually really helpful in reducing those risks, those upper respiratory tract infections. In fact, it was 27% reduction. So that's pretty incredible. We talked about our kids that could potentially be sick 25% of the time. It's nice to know that there are certain probiotic species that are also helping support us keep our immune system happy and healthy and maybe reducing the risk of those infections. If you're looking for a probiotic supplement for a kid, here's an example of one you can consider. This is a doctor-formulated probiotic by Garden of Life. It's organic. It's for kids. It's got 5 billion CFUs in it. It's a cute little chewable. It's pretty tasty. There's a strawberry banana, for example. It's got vitamin C and vitamin D3 in it, which is also great for immunity. And not only having a bunch of different strains, remember we wanted that garden to be lots of different colors, lots of different flowers. We have lots of different probiotics in here. It also includes that BIO4 that we saw was so helpful in the previous study for immune support. This will support children's intestinal and gastrointestinal health, helps maintain immune function, assists the body in the ability to metabolize nutrients, because if you're eating all these good whole foods, it'd be really nice if your body could actually get those nutrients into it and break those down appropriately. It also helps in the absorption and use of calcium and phosphorus, which helps us build strong bones and teeth. Another great and important thing for us to do with active kids and teens at home. One final last thing about the gut. Your gut and your brain are like besties. They're always on the phone together chatting. And this gut brain axis or this communication that happens is extremely important because when we want to talk about the improvement of our kids' well being, we also want to think about their happiness and their wellness. And 75%, almost majority of the serotonin or the happy chemical that your body has actually gets produced in your gut. So a happy gut can also mean more serotonin in the body, which can be beneficial. And since 73% of us parents believe that sports are benefiting our child's mental health, it's kind of nice to know where maybe some of those good happy chemicals are coming from. And we are correct, by the way. Sports do make kids happy. We've seen in studies that participation in sports is associated with a lower risk of things like depression, stress, and anxiety. And it increases their self esteem, their confidence, their creativity, and interestingly, their cognitive performance. So, yay for kids being active, yay for active teens, and yay for parents for being there to help them and support them in finding their nutritional advantage. I'm hoping that some of these products were helpful for you, hoping some of the information today was helpful for you, and I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today on the webinar. There is a chat box, so if there were any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.